Okay, so the next session is the outcome of the workshops we've run in the two different cities we've come across so far, which is Sendai and Istanbul. And in each of these cities, as we heard from Adam earlier, we invited our GloNet champions to run a workshop with a small group of people from each city answering this challenge that we, Future Everything, have devised with Adam in response to some of his ideas about the networked city. That challenge is the Serendipity City Challenge, and it's asking us if we need serendipity for creativity, how can we ensure that we have spaces of serendipity in the networked city? So in each of the 4 GloNet cities, and we'll hear from 2 of them now, we've had workshops run where people explore this question with local people on the ground, exploring these questions from that city's perspective. And we're going to hear from the 2 people who've led each of those workshops, and these are the people actually from Manchester. So for our audience in Manchester, you might see some familiar faces. They're going to talk us through the 3 statements that we've asked them to create in 140 characters, naturally, because everything's in 140 characters now, isn't it? And after we've heard from both of them, so that will be Rachel first for Istanbul, followed by John for Sendai, Adam's going to give us some reflections on how this might answer his challenge and how he sees some of the dangers of the network city. So if I can hand over to Rachel.
Thanks very much, Drew. Wow, I mean, I think the first thing to say is that it's extremely difficult to boil down all our concepts into 140 characters or less. And this original challenge was meant to be a 2-hour workshop. And I think, how many hours have we talked? I mean, I think we were counting it up last night, maybe 24 hours, and I only got here on Monday night. So this is the tip of the iceberg for us, really. But our 3 statements are: to address serendipity in the city satisfactorily, we must view it in terms of the political sphere, of the politics under which our cities are being made and remade. The second is that serendipity can't meet any standard of consistency with itself unless backed by solid and virtuous creativity that's good for all, rather than good for the few. And the third is by using tools available to us, technological or otherwise, we can utilize serendipity as a tool for subversion of existing structures and hierarchies. So, a little bit more about what that means. On the first statement, serendipity, how we address it satisfactorily in the terms of this political sphere, is very much about the fact that the overarching theme of our conversations were to say serendipity is extremely important, but for it to thrive, the underlying conditions must be changed. And some of the things that came up in our discussions were about access to networks and technologies. And one of the issues here in Istanbul is that, for example, YouTube is banned, ostensibly on the notion that the PKK are...
On many notions.
On many notions.
Yeah.
It's also a criminal offence to insult Turkishness, although there is no definition of what that might be. And that's something that Orhan Pamuk encountered when he criticised the government for their role in the Armenian genocide. The third is what happens to people in a city space. Last night we were out in the city, and our fantastic sound and tech guy, who's just sitting opposite me, was stopped and searched by the police on absolutely no grounds whatsoever, and they gave him a thorough search. I mean, they were taking off his socks and shoes and looking in his bag, which I think is quite a dangerous thing. But it's something that happens in Manchester too, a lot. I think there's a lot of resonances for crossover between the 2 points. Do you want to say a few words on that, Nafis?
Sure, yeah, but I want to, the reason behind this first statement is basically the idea that serendipity, the concept of serendipity in and of itself is empty, is an empty concept. That is not to sort of reduce its value, but that is to say that by serendipity we try to say too many things with one concept, and for it to take meaning, the content needs to be filled. And what we're trying to say here is that giving it meaning, giving it content, depends on local circumstances that are political as well as economic.
And I guess this is also a good point to say, what serendipity is.
Sure. Yeah.
Which is, to paraphrase, kind of unfortunate and completely unexpected instances, meetings and occurrences.
Yeah, I'd like to view it as creativity.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. I hope I haven't cut you off a little bit. So I think quite some challenges coming back to us. I think from Istanbul, we've kind of posed a challenge, and you've come back with some real reasons actually why maybe there's some bigger issues lurking underneath that have to be looked at first. We can now hand over to John Grant in Sendai to report back on the outcome there.
Hello everybody. My name's John. I'm from the city of Manchester, and I'm in the Japanese city of Sendai, which is a place I've found has a very, very strong creative community. I'm here to sort of ask the question, with that creative community, of how can creativity exist without serendipity, and how does technology impact on it? Sendai is a city in the northeast of Japan. It's got many public spaces, galleries, bars, cafes, arcades, and arcades are these areas in the city centre environment which contain shops, gaming places, etc. There's also an extremely good event space called Mediatek, which features a number of different events, exhibitions, and allows the creative community and the public community to be able to network with one another. All of these places are great to stimulate serendipitous encounters, simply because they encourage chance introduction and chance meeting with different people. We're all humans, we all realise this, but we're also all animals. This also means that we're very keen to form communities, scenes, or tribes. These scenes or communities can be based on our own interests, our occupations, our hobbies and pursuits. Again, by talking to people from different scenes and from different communities, this also brings about chance encounters. Individuals create serendipity outside of their own core group and outside of these scenes by simply communicating. This leads us to one of our statements. We believe that serendipity works better in a small to medium-sized city where it has a tangible centre with better networking with people across these different tribes and scenes. The technology aids this process. Web, mobile, and geolocative technologies all allow some kind of preemptive research. People find out about people before they meet them. People find out about places before they go there. And people often find out about the different encounters that they can expect when they go to places. By increasing this speed of discovery through the web, we believe that we can improve the quality of serendipity by essentially taking out a needless step that can lead us to a greater position where we can get to the very heart of the issue. Art and culture has always revolved around spaces, with these spaces traditionally being places of worship, which now have become cafes. These places for artists have always encouraged networking and communication. The cutting creative edge of a city is all about the juxtaposition between interaction, technology, and the physical space or presence. And we believe that serendipity is created by these three elements. This leads us to our second statement. Interpersonal meetings and social technology can work together in small to medium-sized cities to provide quality serendipitous encounters. But how can we improve the quality of this serendipity through technology? Spaces are important, events are important, festivals are important, talks, lectures, and inspirational speakings are important. Social acceptance is also important. But there's another thing that's very important in the sense of preservation of place. Don't just tear something down. Serendipity can occur there too, and should be encouraged to occur there. Person-to-person or peer-to-peer serendipity is important in a small to medium-sized city like Sendai. Sendai is very similar to Manchester in its sense of relationship with its capital city. Manchester has a similar relationship with London. But this person-to-person communication can keep the creative heartbeat pulsing and is vital for driving collaboration. And it's this collaboration, which is simulated through serendipity. These collaborations ultimately form bonds which can form greater impact on a creative economy because smaller teams of people can actually take on the bigger fish, if you will. It creates a new and stronger offering. And this supports our final statement. For Sendai's creative industry to prosper further, serendipity needs to play a part to form a completely different proposition to that of larger cities. There's no creativity without serendipity. There's no serendipity without chance encounters and meetings. Technology and open data simply aid these interpersonal relationships and form a cohesiveness which allow them to develop. This aids creative research within an urban area, which ultimately will lead to serendipitous encounters. So to increase that quality of serendipity and to encourage it to happen, if you improve on the quality of the encounter, you improve on the output of that creative industry. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you to both Sendai and Istanbul for your statements. It's fabulous being here, kind of triangulated between the three cities right now. And now I'm going to hand over to Adam to give some response and reflection to those two statements.
Lovely, thanks so much. Big Otskare Samadeshta to the folks in Sendai, and I'm afraid I don't know how to thank you in Turkish, so you'll have to forgive me for that. I have to say, I was really delighted in this second session to hear it's almost as if it was the return of the repressed, the things that never emerged in the first session, eco-security, questions of the neoliberal use of networks, slums, the existence of billions of disempowered people and foreclosed lives. I'm reminded that the great Finnish architect Eliel Saarinen said we must always design things by thinking of the next larger context in which they're embedded. And these things, aside from being humanly important, are the ultimate bracketing context in which the design of our systems has to be considered. So I was very, very, I was just delighted to hear those subjects, those topics reintroduced, and hopefully they can help put a more human face on our considerations. So that speaks to the question of in terms of the political sphere raised by Istanbul. With regard to subverting structures, I think we have to be careful about subverting structures. Here's why. In my take, the network is capable of taking the public and making it private. We see that the network flows of the neoliberal era have meant in many places that the collapse of public space. The introduction of sort of a militarized, privatized control of space, the use of network surveillance to control people's freedom of movement. That is also a subversion. And yet, I do cling to the seeds of hope. I think that there are more positive and productive meanings of the word subversion as well. We can invert private in public. Again, kind of a bivalent thing here. Privacy becoming public can mean the leakage of things that we might not want everybody to know through our Facebook pages or through rich machine inference applied to our various purchases and choices as we represent ourselves online. But it also can mean mega house, which I thought was just absolutely brilliant. I think that the use of the network to turn previously private spaces into shared and public resources is really hopeful and really neat. And I thought that was a lovely project. A last point I'd make about that, though, is that there's a historical resonance to me as well in a lot of this. The talk of lightweight infrastructure, configurable infrastructure, actually goes back to a guy named Cedric Price and his Fun Palace in the late 1950s. The talk of enabling ad hoc use of place goes back to non-plan in the late 1960s. So it occurs to me that maybe these things were sort of articulated ahead of their technological realizability, and maybe the moment of their realization is here at last, and that makes me really happy. Finally, I want to respond to the point about better in a small to medium-sized city that the folks in Sendai raise. I agree in some respects. I think that size matters. I think that networks enable small parties to take on large actors. And again, when we say that, I think of Al-Qaeda as well as the sorts of things we're talking about. So we need to be careful. I mean, there are definite negative implications and less happy implications of the ability of empowering small actors to compete against large actors. But by the same token, I agree. I would even take it a step further than you guys did. I would say that trunk is probably more meaningful in the life of Sendai than the MediaTek is. I would probably say that the sort of small, networked, intensely human environment that you've built there probably says more and better things to me than the existence of the MediaTek, which is this gigantic, elaborate, expensive, star-architected creation. I'm also put in mind of friends of mine in Tokyo who did something called Collab, which was brilliant when the commercial occupation of a building was up and they still had a space of time before the building would be demolished. Collab, what it allowed to do was have small creative offices occupy that space and used it on like a temporary basis for a year or two. And probably got more value out of that architecture than it had in its entire previous service lifetime up till that point. So I am just, again, warmly enthusiastic about the prospect of using network resources to turn small, local, intensely personal, intensely human organizations into global competitors, if you'll allow me to use that phrase. Overall, I thought a really, really fruitful dual session. I personally tend to resonate more with the sorts of political questions that were raised in the second half, and I'm very grateful for the reintroduction of that discourse into our proceedings here. But overall, wonderful responses. Thank you so very much. You've obviously taken all of this work very seriously, and I'm delighted to see the things that have come out of it. So thank you very much. And thank you.